Nous croyons en Dieu, le Père Tout-Puissant, Créateur du ciel et de la terre.
So the disciples have returned from their little missionary journey, and Jesus asks them, what do people say? Who do they say that I am? And man, if that was bait, they bit, right? Because they're all laughing at these absurd ideas that people have. And I mean, you can just hear them, right? They're like, Jesus, you wouldn't believe it. This one guy told me that you must be John the Baptist, come back from the dead. Like you still have your neck and everything. And this other disciples like Andrew or somebody says, oh, that's nothing. We visited this whole town that is convinced that you are Elijah returning. Like, that's crazy. And a bunch of them were like, yeah, like they don't know what to make of you, Jesus. Like they're thinking you're Jeremiah or one of the prophets come back. And there's laughter all around. But Jesus had thrown a curveball, and it's coming back around and crossing the plate. And he nails it home saying, and who do you say that I am? And all of a sudden that laughter probably died down a little bit. And there were some nervous shuffles and nobody made eye contact, especially not with Jesus. They hadn't had to answer that question yet about their friend who did incredible things and spoke incredible words. And I don't know whether they pushed Peter forward or he just liked to step out of the boat onto the rough seas. But here Peter goes out onto the rough seas, kind of stammering out his best answer. And he's like, Jesus, you're like the son of God, the savior of the world. And he was right. And I can only imagine the relief, the nods of agreement and approval, but the relief as not only did Peter speak, but what they all had in their hearts was validated by Jesus. So this opens a question for us. This profession of faith of Peter is like, what's the role of our faith and what's God's role in our salvation? Because Jesus keeps telling people, he just told the Canaanite woman, your faith has saved you. How many times does he say, great is your faith? Let it be done unto you according to your faith. Like there's something about faith that's very important to our salvation and to Jesus. And yet we also know that salvation is completely gift. Like somehow we kept both the letters of St. Paul and the Gospel of John and stuck them in the same book. And we know that our salvation has been completely given to us by God, and we haven't earned any of it, not even with our faith. So what does this mean? And I'd suggest it would help us to think about the fact that there's a difference between profession of faith and faith. Like Peter professed his faith, but Jesus was less impressed with the content of what he said, the content of his profession, as with the faith. What is faith? There's a difference between beliefs, these things that we believe, maybe the content of our faith, that Jesus is the Christ, that there's a difference between beliefs and faith. Like our faith, even if our faith makes us profess that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, even if it makes us profess like Peter did, John chapter 6, my favorite profession of faith from him, when everybody had left because Jesus was saying we had to eat his flesh and drink his blood, and they thought he was crazy. And there's just the 12 left. And Jesus tells them, are you leaving too? And again, Peter jumps out of the boat and says, Jesus, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life. Like that faith was built on a relationship. He had come to know Jesus and he couldn't leave. He didn't understand a word of what Jesus was saying, but he couldn't leave because because Jesus loved him, and God loved him in Jesus, and he loved Jesus. And that's what faith is this relationship. And I'll say a relationship of love, the Father's love for us, that we receive in relationship with Jesus. And that relationship, that love, is essential to our salvation. And love is different than carpentry, right? If you put a nail in the board, it goes in. That kind of creation, that kind of making something, it's different. The relationship of faith is a relationship of love. And love has to be given, and God gives it freely. But it also has to be received. And we're invited to receive God's gift of love. And Jesus says, if you'll do that, you can have anything, right? If you do that together, if you find God's love together, gathered as two or three, Christ being present in the community, God will give it to us. Anything in this relationship of love. So I think that might help us, right? That the profession that Peter makes is a profession of faith. It's a profession of his relationship with Jesus, and a profession that that relationship with Jesus is his relationship with the Father, and that it's a relationship of love and salvation. And Peter's receiving, accepting the love that God the Father is offering him through Jesus. And that's all Jesus wanted as he walked the earth, was to give the Father's love and to have that love received. Because that's the source of salvation. And now, in these end times that go on, as a church, we're invited to live out the same mystery, to make the Father's love present by our way of living, by our mission, and to receive that love for our salvation.
Mystère de la foi.